There's nothing more comforting on a winter's day than a big bowl of soup. So today we're going to go ahead and make one of my favorite soups. At least it used to be my favorite until something happened, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Butternut squash soup. Lots of variations available for butternut squash soup. Today we're going to make a pretty basic one with one little kick in it. Let's start with what our hardware will be. We're going to need a large stock pot. We're going to need a very good vegetable peeler, always our whisk, and in this case we're going to need a little ladle. For our power equipment, we're going to use our blender today. Now our blender will play a very important part, but not till a little bit later. All right, let's go ahead and start with our first thing, which is peeling this butternut squash. Now, here's where my story comes in. Up until maybe 5 years ago, I would make butternut squash in different forms all the time. And then one day I peeled the butternut squash and all of a sudden my hands became very dry and red and irritated. I had developed contact dermatitis, an allergy to the flesh of the butternut squash. So I'm not going to let that deter me today. I'm going to go ahead and glove up and we're going to peel our butternut squash, despite the fact that it can hurt my hands. All right, so I always like to have these nitrile gloves, kitchen gloves that we can use, helps with preventing cross-contamination if you're doing something with chicken or something like that. All right, so we're going to peel our butternut squash starting from the top, just working our way down. This is not easy to peel. It's got a very thick skin, so this will take me a couple minutes to go ahead and peel. One thing you do want to get past is this little green layer here. You still want to get that out of there if you can. It's not particularly good, so it kind of takes two swipes at it to get to the actual flesh. I've got my butternut squash pretty much peeled, and we'll go from there. Let's talk about some other ingredients that'll be in the soup. Of course, it's going to be soup. Now you have your option to use chicken stock or vegetable stock. Chicken stock's probably a little more common. I'm going to go ahead and make this vegan, really, certainly with no animal in it. So we're going to use vegetable stock. We're going to use an onion, small yellow onion. That's all it requires. 1 clove of garlic. Get out of there. And a citrus source. It could be a lemon. In this case, we happen to have a little miniature grapefruit tree, and it sometimes produces these little grapefruits. So I'm going to use that for my lemon substitute. Spice-wise, I'm going to use Chinese 5-spice, which has a lot of the warming spices that we're going to need for this soup, including cinnamon, star anise, some other things, let's see, ginger, things like that. Then I'm going to have one of these little things. This is a habanero or a bonnet. Depending on how spicy you want it, it's how you determine how you're going to deal with this particular little pepper, because these are spicy. Then of course we're going to have salt and pepper. All right, so let's start with our next step, which is dispatching this butternut squash. Easiest way to cut this is to take the top off and the bottom off. Then I like to cut it this way first, so I have a little bit of easier things to deal with. And then go ahead and start to slice this part in half Then maybe I'll even do this one more time this way. Because what I'm going to do is kind of end up making sort of a julienne of butternut squash. Let me see if I can get some of this out of the way. So just kind of cut it like this. Now the nice thing is our blender is going to be involved in this. So we're going to cut this. The blender is going to just purify or make this into a liquid almost. So it doesn't really matter if you're not even on this. But I'd like to try to get them to be, I don't know, 3/4 of an inch cubes, something like that. Again, it doesn't really matter. Just go ahead and cut them into pieces however you want. Be a little careful. You have kind of odd size thing here, so you want to make sure that you're safe with your knife cuts. Now when we get to this part, this bottom part, we do have to do one more thing to make this ready to eat. We got to get rid of these seeds. These are no good. Let me grab a spoon. Sorry about that. We'll use our spoon and get rid of all of this. I'm just going to put it in the garbage here over to my side. Scraping it out with the spoon. Try to get all of that out of there. Okay, so now we can go ahead and treat these the same way as we treated the bottom part. I'll cut it in half this way. Go ahead and cut it this way. Again, well, if it wants to do that, that's fine. I'm not looking for really even chunks here. I'm just looking to kind of chop it into whatever pieces, whoops, -1 you want to use. So somewhere around an inch, but again, it doesn't really matter too much. You're just trying to get it all chopped up. Try doing it this way. Your blender is going to do most of the work, so we're not super concerned. Let me get something to put all this in while we get rid of our other vegetables. Okay. Move this a little, and I could just shove them in here. Okay, let's put that aside. Clean up our cutting board. Try to get any of that off of there. Okay, so next let's deal with our onion. Our onion, again, it doesn't really matter how you chop this. You just want to get it a little bit smaller. So we'll go ahead and take the top and the bottom off. Cut it in half. See if I can get rid of some of the skin. Oh! Well, we lost an onion. Okay. Chop that up. So I guess we're going to use half an onion since I dumped one on the floor. That's okay. Here's our onion, here's our garlic. I'm going to just go ahead and break this up. I don't really even have to break that up. That can just be kind of, well, I'll cut it a little bit, chunk it up a little bit. There you go. Clean off our board. I'm just going to cut this in half just to prep it for later. We are going to need some acid in the soup. It will help balance it. Oh, what am I going to do with you? If I cut this up, then I have to put pieces in there and the soup is going to get really spicy. So one thing you can do is just kind of do this. I just kind of crushed it. And this one, whether you're allergic to something or not, I would wear gloves to do this because these will hurt you if you're not careful. Okay, so now I got kind of my mise en place, my things I'm going to put in the soup, and we can go ahead and start. So let's get our power equipment, our heating unit over here, and we'll go ahead and begin. Okay, we've got our cooking apparatus ready to go. We're going to need to put a little bit of oil in here. You could use butter, but again, I'm going to try to make this stick with vegan here. So I'm going to just use some, in this case, I'm going to use just vegetable oil. This is canola oil. You could use olive oil if you wanted a little additional taste. Put maybe a couple teaspoons in there. We'll go ahead and get our aromatics in there. Our onions and our garlic. Not really looking to cook this a whole lot. Oops, get a little piece out of there. And then we'll add our squash. I'm going to try to go ahead and get a little bit of, maybe even a little bit of color on here. One of the options with this is to roast the butternut squash first. It'll be maybe a little bit more nutty. Oh yeah, we'll put this guy in there too. A little bit more nutty. If it's roasted, almost a completely different flavor with roasted squash. So we're going to stick with just the unroasted or raw squash when we start our soup. Okay, not looking to do anything special with this. Just kind of heating it up, trying to get a little bit of color. It'll only take maybe a couple, 3 minutes. You don't want to burn your garlic that's in here. If you do happen to find a little seed like I just did, get it out of there. It's already starting to smell pretty good. Okay, let's go ahead and add our liquid. So we're going to use 2 containers here of the vegetable stock. These are 1 quart, 32 ounces, so we're going to make 2 quarts of soup. So I can go ahead and just add this in here. Now you'll notice this doesn't come out very fast. Little pro tip, stab your soup. Stab your stock and it'll just come out of these containers a lot quicker. Alright, there's one. Don't stab yourself. Alright, there's 2. So we now have a little garlic in there. That's supposed to be in there. We got our 2 cups of soup that are going to go ahead and cook. We're going to raise this to a pretty hearty simmer, and then we're going to let it cook until the butternut squash is soft. Now that's going to take probably 45 minutes, or maybe a little less than that, depending on how much you cut your squash. You do want to get it reasonably soft. Before I leave that too much, I'm going to go ahead and add our acid to this. This is the equivalent of half of a lemon that I'm putting in there. The acid in the soup really helps just create balance. You're not going to taste lemon or grapefruit in this case. You're not going to taste it in the soup, but it does something to the soup that kind of helps balance the flavor. Alright, we're going to let this go and we'll come back in about 45 minutes or so. I can take my gloves off now. Okay, it's been about 45 minutes. Our soup is pretty well cooked. Our squash easily breaks when I put the spatula to it, so it's tender, and we're ready to go to the next step, which is to puree the soup. Now, I have a pretty high-speed blender, which will do a great job pureeing it, but this is tricky because you are dealing with a very hot liquid spinning around at a lot of miles an hour that can really, really hurt you. So be careful when you do this, and be aware of some of the technique that's involved in doing it. So I'm going to go ahead and spoon some of this liquid in here using our spatula. I'm not going to try to pour this. Oh, here's our friend. Remember him? We're going to take him out. He's done all his things he's going to do. And we're going to go ahead and put this in. Several ladles. I'm certainly not going to come anywhere near filling the blender up. Probably only go about halfway. I'm also getting more of the chunks here and some of the liquid. This run through the blender is going to be more about getting some of the chunks broken up. Okay, and you can do this in as many steps as you want to take. Okay, so that's about all I'm going to do, maybe one or two more. Again, because when this hot liquid gets spun around, it starts to climb up the blender, and it can be a problem. So one thing you always want to do is take your blender lid, take off the little centerpiece here. You don't want to create like a vacuum in here so it comes squirting out the sides. That is a recipe for being burned. So we're going to put our lid on with the opening there. I'm going to grab a towel, and I'm just going to kind of gently put the towel over there to capture any liquid that wants to spin up. I'm going to start our blender on very low speed and just let it go for a minute. I'm checking how high it's going up. Let me go ahead and turn up the speed a little bit. Okay, so this part is done. Now, I don't want to put it back in my soup. That kind of defeats the whole purpose. So I'm going to incorporate another container just temporarily. I'm just going to use our bowl we used earlier and go ahead and put this strained soup in here. And now we have an empty container that we can go ahead and fill up again. I've got most of the chunks, or maybe, I don't know, 75% of the chunks that are in here. We'll try to get as many out as we can. I don't think I'm going to be able to put the whole liquid part in here. Maybe I will. Again, there's no reason to do this in, you know, as little batches as you can. You have the blender. You might as well use it and do it as safely as you can. Okay, so I don't have a whole lot of liquid left, so I'm going to go ahead and pour this in here. Okay. We're not done with this, and because I'm going to reuse this bowl, I'm going to actually make sure I get all the chunks out of here, because I do want to have a smooth soup without any chunkies in it, at least for now. You can certainly add them later if you want to have a little more textural nuance to the soup. Okay, let's put our lid on. Again, we have a little more liquid than chunks this time, so again, being careful. We'll go ahead and turn it on to its lowest setting. Crank it up a little. Okay, because I have emptied our bowl here, we can go ahead and start adding things back. So I'm going to go ahead and put this initial first batch we did. We're not going to use that container anymore. And we can go ahead and put the second batch in here. Now, for all intents and purposes, this soup is done. But there's a lot more that can happen to it if you choose to do it. I am going to let it simmer for a little bit longer just to finish cooking. But one thing I want to do right now is I want to go ahead and give this a taste, because I haven't put in, if you've noticed, I have not added any salt yet. The vegetable stock we used has a lot of salt in it, and I don't know if we even need any more. I did, while this was cooking, go ahead and add our 5 spice. So it's been seasoned that way. Let's see if we need any more salt or anything else. Oh, I can taste the habanero. I'm going to say, yeah, we do need a little bit more salt. Again, you can always add more salt. You can't take it out. I'm going to add quarter teaspoon maybe. Give it a quick little stir in there. Give our testing spoon a rinse. Try it again. Oops, see, you're gonna spill. Yep, that's good. Yeah, that's got a little bit of heat, but not too much. So I'm really happy with how the heat turned out. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and put this back on the burner. I'm gonna use our stove this time. And talk about what we can do with the soup. Okay, so the soup can be used as is, as a starter to a meal. It can be used as lunch by itself. As far as additions you can do to the soup, I certainly could, if I chose to, add dairy product to it. I could add cream to this to make it cream of butternut squash soup, I guess that would be what it would be called. Milk, if you don't want quite as much fat in there. You could add apples. Little diced up apples play really well with butternut squash. They're very good friends. And that would give you a little bit of a texture to it. You could put croutons on top when served. With sour cream, really anything you want to do in your serving would be fine. You could have chicken with this. It would be a good meal as part of the soup. So that's butternut squash soup made in kind of the, I don't want to say basic fashion, but sort of the thing you can build on and make it your own if you want to. So that's pretty much it. I'm Pat from Calm Sea Cooks, and if you do like this kind of content, please go ahead and subscribe to our channel and hit the thumbs up. And thanks for everything. We'll talk to you on our next one. Goodbye.